Welcome back to our channel. Today we are going to discuss something very important, and I hope you stick around to the end. We are going to discuss 5 costly mistakes that Nigerians often make when you want to undertake a building project, and we hope that with this project we will help prospective clients and people that want to build to avoid such mistakes. First one is skipping soil test. I know a whole lot of us, even those that have standing or existing structures, we don't even know what soil test is, or we don't even consider it as important. But soil test is a preliminary exercise that is undertaken on the plot of land or the space where you're going to build your structure. The essence of it is just to get the component of your soil, what is under the ground. It goes beyond what you're just seeing. There are some soil that the top might be dry, but 2 meters or 3 meters below it cannot hold should I say heavy load. So soil test, in doing that, it helps us to get, number one, the soil bearing capacity of that space. What that soil bearing capacity does is it helps us to determine the kind of foundation that we are going to do on that plot of land. So the reason why you see some places have pad foundation, the one where you have square boxes at specific places where the pillars will be coming out from, whether you're going to have pad foundation, raft foundation, pile, whatever the type of foundation is, it is that soil test that will help us to determine what kind of foundation to do. So when you skip soil test, it's basically leaving you to just guesses, because one, you don't know the amount of load that your building can carry, and sometimes it's even risky that we are having multi-story buildings and we are not carrying out soil tests. I think this is because there are no enough enforcement, and especially when we are building in our villages, there are no agencies that will come to check if what you're doing is right or wrong. So because there are no enforcement, we can easily rub it off and just continue with the building, but it's very dangerous. That is why sometimes you see buildings with very big cracks running from one end to the other. That is because the soil test was not undertaken and the soil bearing capacity is not enough on one side to carry that building. So instead of doing maybe a continuous pad or a raft foundation, you went and did a pad foundation, one here, one there, and that settlement, when settlement occurs, then that cracking can also appear on the wall as a form of fault in the foundation. Secondly, we are going to talk about using substandard material. I think this comes from a place of we trying to cut costs, and that will push us to buy mostly the cheapest material in the market, and sometimes very unverified materials. An example I've seen on site is, there was this time that POP got scarce in the market and the prices was a bit high. So there is this brand that was rolled out during that period, and people were just rushing it and buying it. Then when we were to use one of such products, we discovered that it was a rebag, more like they bought POP, then bought calcium that is used in paint production and mix them. Both of them are white, so you would not know. So when you go to the market, you see white bag, everything inside is white, obviously, so you can't know. But when it comes to site and it is open, we now found out that there is inconsistency in the material and it was returned back to the supplier. It was the story is short, by the way, but that is an example of what you can see in the market. And when it comes to reinforcement, you go to the market for reinforcement. TNT, for instance, there are several gauges of TNT, which is a reinforcement, iron rods. There are various gauges of it. So you can, even if you're not going to the site, you can send money for so and so. Let's say 16 mm, you say 16,000, you send 16,000. And when you go to the market, you see various gauges of the 16 mm, and someone will go and buy the one of maybe 14.5. That is just a little more than 12 mm. But you see 16 mm written on the rod. Because you don't know, you would accept it. So that is another way that's another mistake that we make very often, buying substandard materials. And because we, as a client, you do not have a means of checking it, when you see it on site, the little knowledge you have, you can just go and check and confirm whatever you want to confirm from your little knowledge, and you just let it slide. And those are the things that accumulate to various disasters on our projects and on our site. So if you want to get quality materials, it is advised that one, you get a trusted artisan or a contractor on site, someone that knows what he or she is doing, that will follow up every detail from beginning to the end. And that is where I sometimes like the idea of my brother is in charge of the site, or my cousin who is a mason, or who is usually they call them engineer, who is an engineer, is on site. And when you have such people who do not have in-depth knowledge of each construction material, let me say you have a mason now overseeing your site, he can maybe do very well on mason activities, block work, maybe cement mixture, he can do very well on that aspect. But when you come to reinforcement, carpentry, electrical work, there are different people, different professionals that come together to make your site work. So if you don't have someone who has vast knowledge in one or two or all of these fields, like your site engineer or your builder, who can coordinate each of these activities very well, you tend to have all these things filtering in with the substandard materials, and at the end of the day, it will cost you to buy sometimes double of what you're supposed to buy. Thirdly, we are going to talk about skipping the dam-proof course. Dam-proof course is basically a means of stopping underground movement of water. That is movement of water from the ground to the top. You know, you go to houses and you see sometimes the paint peeling off the lower part of the wall, mostly paint peeling off as a result of water moisture moving from the ground up. And this DPC, usually called DPC, is a way of stopping that water from moving from the ground upwards. There are various ways you can stop such. The common way is using this dam-proof DPC membrane or dam-proof membrane. That's the cellophane nylon that we use to cover after you do your filling, your hardcore and everything. You use to cover the surface before you cast. That helps to stop any water from moving from the ground up. And another way of doing it, there is a dam-proof membrane that is used to run along the walls. That stops any water, maybe when you're using hollow blocks, any water or any moisture movement from the ground up. So when you skip that, and sometimes it is prevalent when you're building bungalows, because we know that we are not going to have anything up, so we can do whatever, just dig your ground, start raising the block. Then when you get to door level, you cut your door, fill and continue. But like we have been trying to establish in this video, these are mistakes that we make. And even though it is a common practice, there are some sites that you would go, or when you're building and your engineer says, let's bring so and so, want to do so and so. You say, no, my brother that built his house did not use it. So person that built the house, and the house is still standing quite all right. But what is the condition of the house? 10 years, 15 years, 20 years from now, when you keep those two houses side by side, there's definitely going to be difference. So don't skip DPC, don't skip that dam-proof course, the membrane, putting something to stop movement of water from the ground up. There are also some types of chemicals and cements that are used to stop water from coming up. You can use that to do your casting. You can also use it to mold your blocks if you're molding blocks on site. Mix them with your cement mixture. You can also use it to do the chalking. So when everything under the ground is waterproof, the chances of water coming up would be 0 to nothing. So try as much as possible not to skip the DPC. Thank you. Fourthly, we are going to consider poor contractor agreement and payment plans. This is very critical because it is easy for you to just get someone, go and start work. And how much will it take to do the house or to build a house for me? Someone will tell you, okay, give me 50 million. And you say, okay, go and start. Start with 10 million. Give the person 10 million. No written agreement. No milestone that would be achieved before the person asks for next payment. No proper planning. no timeline, nothing, just vibes and inshallah. So it is very important before you give anybody your money or before you give anybody your project, how did that person present his or herself? How are they going to achieve this milestone? When are you going to start? Basically, have something written down and signed, obviously, so that you can hold this person accountable, and this person can also hold you accountable. Very important, because sometimes we only look at the contractor's side and not the client's side. You as a person, settle down, gather your money. If the person says it's going to take 10 million, 5 million to finish up the house, have your 5 million or have a means of getting that 5 million within the agreed period of time, so that when this person starts the work, you say, okay, when you get to DPC, I will give you this amount. When it gets to DPC, even if it's not available, make sure that you have paid the person up to DPC level. Then when the person asks for money and it has not gotten to that DPC, you cannot draw the person's attention and say, this is our agreement. Our agreement is this money was supposed to take you to DPC level. And until you get to that point, you are not due for another payment, except there are maybe circumstances beyond his or her control. Then you guys can now come together, agree on a new term and still put it down. In that way, everybody would be on his or her toes, but when there is no agreement and everything is just, I know this guy, he's my he used to be my schoolmate, when money is involved, a lot of people change. Let me just use that, or the true nature of people come out. So basically, have a written document that will hold everybody, from your planning, from the drawing and everything. Let it be captured in an agreement. In that way, you can hold everybody can hold everybody responsible. Not just the client holding the contractor responsible here, but also the contractor holding the client responsible, because there is a written agreement. And this is where it can get dicey when you have your uncle, your brother, your cousin, or whosoever handling your site. Imagine calling your brother and say, come make we sign paper. It will be like you're not trusting your brother, or the bond of brotherhood is not strong enough. You have to involve the law. But when it's someone that was hired particularly for a job, it is not absurd to call the person that, come, let's sign a document. So it is very important. The fifth and final point is, it is now a thing that most of the structures, most of the building that we have going on these days, you just see tiny, 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 tiny windows. Why? I don't think anybody has a reasonable or a well-constructed reason for that. Maybe someone just did it somewhere. It looks fine, quite all right. It looks fine. But what is the effect of having that kind of window? One, your energy consumption goes up. The numbers of AC that you need for a space, or the work that your AC will need to do to keep that environment cool, would be doubled. But when you have well-ventilated spaces, cross-ventilated spaces, and windows that are wide enough to at least carry natural air into your space, you see that your energy consumption goes low. At the end of the day now, band 8 people, when they bring your bill to you, it becomes outrageous. But these are the things that add up to make this energy consumption enormous. So it is fine, quite all right, to have maybe small windows, but is it actually workable? Does it help your structure? And there are some places that you will see, after painting and maybe you close the door for a few minutes or a few weeks, you come back, you see algae, mold growing on the ceiling, growing on the walls and all those places, because the air is so choked up and moisture, everything, there is no air coming in basically. So, and I know that there are health implications to having these things grow in your spaces. It is okay that you would say, I will always have AC on, I will always have my curtains down, but it is very good for you to have these areas, or all the areas in your house basically, well ventilated, cross ventilated, so that air can move in and out freely without any external forces like the AC or fan pushing it out. Okay, that is just us going over the list. I don't know if you're building or you have someone building. Go through this list and see if there is any of these mistakes that you have made, and you can kindly reach out to us. Let's see if there's a way we can manage the situation. If you are intending to build, this is a pre-warning, if I should say, to help you, navigate your way through the system. And I hope this video helps. You can kindly like. If there's anything I skipped, you can write it in the comment section. Let's discuss further. Thank you.